We're going to show a video in just a couple of minutes, but I want to just start at the beginning, what I think is the beginning of the modern immigration era. And I think it began really on June 15th, 1982, when the Supreme Court decided with the Plyler versus Doe case, Plyler, a Texas school district, that every taxpayer in the country must provide a free education to every child in the world. All they have to do is get to our shore, legally or illegally. That's what really began the unfunded mandates of the federal government to the local taxpayers for them not doing their job of defending the border. And that began in 1982, and it's only gotten worse. Now, previous to that, in 1980, the INS determined, the forerunner to ICE today, determined that there was 1 million illegal aliens in the country, and that was thought to be a problem. That seems almost laughable today. 1 million illegal aliens was a problem. And they decided the way to deal with it was to give them all amnesty, and then they would secure the border. We're starting to hear the same arguments again as we hear the President talk about his amnesty. Of course, we're going to have border security with it. Well, government promises haven't been worth much in the past, and the 1986 amnesty, they were just a little off in their calculation. They estimated there were 1 million people. By the time the 86 amnesty came around, 3.5 million people applied for the amnesty. So if they're as accurate today with their forecasts as they were then, we don't have 12 million illegal aliens in the country. We could have as many as 36 million illegal aliens in the country. The truth is, nobody knows. I don't know. The government doesn't know. Certainly, the Mexican government doesn't know. But I would bet, if we could prove it, that we're much closer to 30 million illegal aliens than we are to the official number of 12 million. In 1992, we began to feel the impact of the 1986 amnesty. That was a big mistake. It was like ringing the dinner bell around the world. The message was, if you can get to the United States, they can't get rid of you. Or they won't get rid of you, but in any case, you will not be got rid of. And everybody in the world now knows somebody or is related to somebody who has gotten here and has gotten amnesty. And every time we have a talking head in Washington, like the President or the head of the Department of Homeland Security or anybody in Washington, D.C. who talks about jobs that Americans won't do or a guest worker plan, ears perk up in the third world. And I can tell you that a week to 2 weeks after a talking head in Washington is on national news talking about jobs that Americans won't do, there's a surge across the southern border, because I'm in touch with ranchers and Border Patrol agents down there. Now, in 1992 in California was when we started to be alarmed at some of the numbers. It began in Southern California. I'm from Marin County. And in 1992, I held a meeting at the California Republican Party convention in Los Angeles, which sort of kicked off the whole statewide meeting. There was a number of us that worked on it, and we brought together the California activists, and we started to talk about all the problems, and there was a lot of common denominators, not the least of which was the pressure on the schools and education. And that was how things got started in California back in 1992. In 1993, I was involved in changing the state law, the driver's license law, that we're currently working with, the law that tries to deny driver's licenses to illegal aliens, a law that they have been trying to undo ever since Pete Wilson left office. There's a current bill up there. I was testifying on it a few weeks ago, SB 1160, which is the 9th attempt to undo this law and to make our driver's license, which isn't all that secure to begin with, less secure. Now, about that same time, the city of San Rafael tried to, where I lived and I owned a small business, wanted to build a job center for all the illegal aliens in San Rafael, which we thought was fine until we found out that 90% of the people that would use it were illegal aliens. And foolish as we were, we thought, well, let's see, if they're in the country illegally, they can't work here legally. No, you shouldn't be spending tax dollars on people that are in our country illegally. Anyway, we won that battle and the city of San Rafael was turned back. As the movement grew, then we ended up with Proposition 187 in 1994, which of course won with almost 60% of the vote, but unfortunately ended up being held up by a federal judge. It languished in Dan Lundgren's Attorney General's office. He never appealed it. The state never appealed it, and it was eventually illegally euthanized by Governor Gray Davis, which was one of the reasons why Davis was recalled just a few years ago. However, in 1994, with the passage of Proposition 187, was also the year that the Republicans took over Congress. And you talk to some California Republicans, and they will tell you that they won their congressional seat in 1994 because of their support for Proposition 187. Congressman Brian Bilbray from the San Diego area is one. He'll tell you right up front, I won because of Proposition 187. I went back to Washington in January of 2005 when the new Congress was sworn in, and talked to a number of staffers there, and they were ready. Within 2 months, they had put together legislation, H.R. 1918, that was this thick, on immigration reform and immigration enforcement. And I talked to some of these staffers, and I said, you can't have written a bill that big in 2 months. What happened? And he says, there's a lot of pressure to do this. A lot of Americans, a lot of congressmen want to do this. 1996, we had another immigration bill, the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996, the IRIRA, as we refer to it. It was passed by Congress. It was actually watered down quite a bit by the likes of Spencer Abraham and with the help of Jack Kemp and Bill Bennett and Grover Norquist and such. But nevertheless, we did get a law passed in 1996. Now, during the 90s, we also had another phenomenon, which is we started to have a great internal migration from the border states into the interior of the country. Businesses had found out that there was virtually no chance that the law was going to be enforced against them. The 1986 law that accompanied the amnesty, which made it illegal to hire illegal aliens. Up until that point, businesses were given a free pass. It was illegal for the illegal alien to work for a business, but it wasn't illegal for the business to hire them. So they made that law fairer by saying we're going to start to penalize the employers if they're caught hiring illegal aliens. But like many immigration laws, it was just not enforced. And what happened with this interior migration into the country, the cities and towns started to experience big city problems. The best example is probably Des Moines, Iowa, which as a result of the Mexican drug cartel that moved into Iowa, saw a spike in crime, 80% of which was methamphetamine related. And in fact, Nightline did a 2-part story on this in the late 90s, where it was as if the Mexican drug cartels had done a survey to find out where the drugs weren't, and then went in there and started to sell the drugs. Now, why Iowa and why the interior? Because a lot of these interior jobs would include the meatpacking industry, of which I've been around a lot. It is filled up with illegal alien Mexican nationals, I can tell you. Hotels and motels, restaurants, and then of course they moved out into construction. But all of this took place, and we've seen this evolution over the years, and all of this while many of us are saying, don't let what happened in the rest of the country happen in California. We wanted to alert the media. We were trying to get the media to focus on the problem continually, and then one day 9/11 happened. A lot of us predicted that 9/11 was going to happen, that our lax enforcement of our immigration laws was going to result in a terror attack. We knew it was going to happen, and the first thing, I mean, my phone was ringing before the second plane hit the tower. You know, what's the immigration status of these guys? Did they sneak into the country? How did they get here? Now, you may hear that these 9/11 terrorists were not here illegally. The fact is they were all illegal aliens. When Mohammed Atta lied in Miami and said he was coming here to be a student, when he knew he was coming here to murder Americans, he became an illegal alien. Now, we don't know how 4 or 5 of them got into the country, but the fact is the ones that we do know how they got in, they used a system that wasn't paying any attention at all. The Visa Express program that allowed Saudis to get a visa to the United States without ever having their application being touched by human hands, practically, was what allowed them to get into the country. The terrorism issue is a big issue, and I want to be sure that everybody is aware of it. So I want to recommend a couple of books to you. First of all, just so that nobody forgets what the terror issue is, this is Lightning Out of Lebanon, is a story of a Hezbollah ring that was operating in Charlotte, North Carolina. It goes into extensive detail as to how they used our lax enforcement of our immigration law to get into the country and to move around the country. These people used a cigarette smuggling plan to funnel $5 to $6 million back to Hezbollah, which is believed by terror experts to be the most dangerous terrorist group in the world. They're operated out of Iran, and it's believed that there are at least a dozen terrorist cells, Hezbollah sleeper cells in the United States, ready to strike whenever, probably whenever it is we end up going after Iran for their nuclear program.